The city of Joburg has said that it should be able to reduce load shedding in that city by using the Kelvin power station. This means it will reduce load shedding by roughly a stage. If the country's on stage 2 load shedding, Joburg would be on stage 1. If the country's on stage 1 load shedding, there might be no load shedding at all. The same scenario also playing out in Cape Town, the city there using barrage storage through a dam. But in Joburg, the story is complicated by a statement issued from the ANC in Joburg last week on Friday, claiming that this would be a start of a process of moving the provision of electricity in Soweto from Eskom to city power. You'll remember, of course, that in some parts of Soweto, there are very low payment rates for electricity. The statement that was released on Friday was then, I suppose the word is, clarified by the regional ANC. Well, let's speak now to the person who I suppose is really in charge. I'm talking about the Mayor of Joburg, Councillor Mpho Moerane. Mr. Mayor, good evening to you. Thank you for your time on the Pulse tonight.
Good evening, Stephen. Good evening to the viewers of Newzroom.
What on earth is going on? Let's start with load shedding first. You're going to use the Kelvin power station. It's a privately owned power station. You've signed an independent power purchase with them.
Well, Kelvin Power has been supplying city power with power for the past 20 years, ranging between 80 and 120 megawatts. The power purchase agreement we signed on Friday is to increase the capacity from 80 to 180, meaning that we're getting 100 megawatts more to the grid in the city. But on Friday, I had a conversation with management of Kelvin that we having load shedding by Eskom. Stage 1 requires that we save 100 megawatts. Stage 2 requires that we save 200. Can they pump up to 220? And they said they agreed that they will pump to 200, actually 220. That means we can avoid stage 1 and stage 2 load shedding. I spoke to Eskom this morning. They say it's a negotiation that has been ongoing, but they're willing to assist. They just want proof that we have the additional capacity of 200 megawatts that we can avoid load shedding in Johannesburg, specifically stage 1 and stage 2.
You point out that the Kelvin power station, you've had an agreement with them for years. I mean, it's a fixture of Johannesburg. It's older, I think, than you and I, Kelvin power station. Why has this not happened before? We've had load shedding in South Africa for 14, 13 years now.
We were binded by the agreement that we had with Kelvin. Firstly, the tariff was high at that time, and we couldn't rely more on them. But with the negotiations that we had to extend the PPA, was to reduce the tariff to basically to what Eskom is charging us, so we can buy more from them without fearing that the taxpayer will have to fork out more money for electricity with the high tariffs of 0.49. We believe that it was too much. So with the new negotiation, the tariff has been reduced to match the Eskom tariff, so we can get more power from them without relying solely on Eskom.
This all happens magically before an election? The private owners of Kelvin power stations decide to reduce their tariff, really?
Well, Stephen, the negotiations started last year. It's not new. They took time. We could have announced this early this year, but because of the complexity of the transaction, it will save the city 1.4 billion. The negotiations dragged, but unfortunately, fortunately, an agreement between both parties, City Power and City, with Kelvin to come to terms on the tariff, because we believe that it's a cost-reflective tariff. They were complaining that coal, they have to buy coal, it's expensive, to run the station is expensive, but we pushed them hard until they agreed that they will reduce their tariff. So the negotiations took longer. We could have unveiled this way before September, October. It should have been done by March, if you ask me.
Timing's wonderful for you, isn't it? I mean, sure, you're the mayor, but you're also a representative of the ANC just before an election. Timing couldn't have been better.
Well, as I said, it could have been done earlier. I think by God's grace, we must praise the Lord that it happened now, and we had to announce it to give people of Johannesburg hope that we will avoid load shedding stage 1 and 2 going forward.
I'm very aware of the difficult political context in which you're operating. We lost Joburg, and I sort of include myself in this because I live here, but we lost one mayor, then we lost another mayor. You had to come in just before an election. It's very complicated. But within all of that, you have said, and the ANC in Joburg has said, that City Power, which is part of Joburg, would be taking over the provision of electricity to Soweto. Now, this is a long-running problem. The amount of money that is owed by Soweto residents to Eskom is massive, I think 12 billion rand. The payment rates there, Eskom tells us, are very, very low, and people are very, very angry at the policy of load reduction. So is it true that City Power is going to take over some of those areas? It will do the provision of power there.
Well, Stevie, let me start by saying that in the past 2 years, our ward councillors in Soweto and Orange Farm were attacked by community when they protested when Eskom implemented load reduction, when Eskom did mass cutoffs, when Eskom could not be there to explain to the residents, when their systems failed and they couldn't provide necessary assistance to the residents. They would attack our councillors. We then called a meeting with Eskom and Minister Pravin. It was July 2020, to highlight the concerns by our ward councillors that can Eskom try to speed up the process to make sure that people get reliable and continuous supply of electricity. But we also asked them to look at transferring Soweto, Orange Farm, Ivory Park, Diepsloot, and Sandton, by the way, to City Power. And they looked at it. 2 months later, they came back to us. They said the board has approved the transfer of these areas into the city. Then we started the negotiation of drafting a memorandum of understanding. And we have been discussing the memorandum of understanding because it's complex. Transferring network with about 4 billion according to Eskom. And there's a debt of 7.5 billion that we need to look at. It's not something that is easy to finalize. We've been negotiating on the MOU, and we, as the city, signed the MOU on Friday, which was prepared by Eskom, and we have sent it to Eskom, and we believe because they prepared the MOU, they will sign it, then we will put work streams of starting the transfer of the assets as well as the people to city's entity called City Power. We believe that we have the mandate from the people on the ground. And Stephen, what I wanted to also highlight, that we've been having these negotiations with Eskom. And one of the things that we are doing, we are helping Eskom and we are working together. On Friday, we delivered 2 315 kVA mini substations from our stores to Soweto and asked Eskom to connect the people of Soweto. They ran out of the mini substations and we are helping them. There's about 40 substations that needs to be replaced in Soweto. And we said we will help you because we did plan for it, by the way, because we were aware that the time will come where we're supposed to assist Eskom.
Okay, I mean, the key thing here is going to be cost, right? I'm going to come to the longer-term problem. I mean, the cost is actually a short-term problem. 12 billion rand is the debt. You've mentioned 4 billion rand in assets. City Power, as I understand it, I think is in debt. I think 4 billion rand, Chris Yellen suggested a short while ago. You'll know Chris Yellen, the energy expert. Where's the money going to come from to do this? Because once the money's changed hands, that's just the beginning. You still then have to get people who on Eskom's version, are not paying free electricity now to pay the city of Joburg free electricity. I don't see any evidence that they will.
Stephen, we believe that the people of Soweto are willing to pay for the electricity. When we go on the ground, they say, we can't pay because there's no service that we're getting from Eskom. Why must we pay? And you go to Eskom and say, give service. They said, but people are not paying. Why must we give service? So it's a catch-22 situation that we have to deal with. But let me put it on record. We have prepaid meters, water prepaid meters in Soweto, and people are paying for water. Why wouldn't they pay for their electricity if we give a service? But also, the issue of debt, it's something that we have to discuss separately. Let me start with the network cost of 4 billion. We're going to be appointing transactional advisors, both us and Eskom, that will look at the network and come up with a true value of the network. And we'll then approach National Treasury because now we are absorbing assets into our books and they have to be paid for. Secondly, the issue of debt. Let me take you back during 1990, 1991. Prior to that era, the Soweto was supplied by the city of Johannesburg. But because Eskom wanted to expand their electrification program, they took over the supply in Soweto at a cost of R1 for the network. And the debt then was not taken over. Now I've requested the terms of reference of that period and say, while you were discussing this, can I have the terms of reference of the 1991 takeover?
But the city of Johannesburg didn't exist at the time. There was a series of different councils that were all merged together. I mean, Randburg and Sandton and all the rest. I mean, I don't know if it's the same legal entity.
Well, we remember we had a city in Soweto. We have a municipality in Soweto. We had a municipality in Johannesburg. But today it's City of Johannesburg. So the city takes over the responsibility. It doesn't matter who was the council at that time. It doesn't matter who was the municipality, because you have taken over, you have absorbed all the metropolitan substructures into the city. So you take the responsibility. So we say that at that time, Eskom did not take over the debt, and the debt was written off. We're saying right now, let's sit together, let's see how we can solve the debt, because we want to help Eskom as well, because the debt is sitting in their books, but we also wouldn't allow that the debt must be transferred. And that's when we are bringing National Treasury, we are bringing National Cocta, come together and say, how do we deal with the debt? Because we don't want our taxpayers or our ratepayers to foot that debt. It's not right, it's unacceptable, and we're not going to allow it.
Councillor Mpho Moerane is the Mayor of Johannesburg. He's with us for a few more moments when we return. Councillor Mpho Moerane is the Executive Mayor of the City of Johannesburg. He's with us. Mr. Mayor, before the break, you made the point that the City of Joburg had installed prepaid water meters in many homes in Soweto with no resistance. But Eskom tried to install prepaid electricity meters many times, and there's been plenty of resistance. Seth Maziboko, I mean, you'll know him. He faces criminal charges for his resistance to the installation of prepaid electricity meters. So I hear your argument that if the city can install water meters, why not electricity meters? But the answer would be Eskom tried and were met with resistance, violent resistance.
Well, Stephen, let me put it on record that initially when Joburg Water were installing these meters, there was resistance. But we have managed to talk to communities. Stephen, we understand the community because we are on the ground. We have ward councillors, we have ward committees, we talk to people. We are able to engage with our communities. We give them water, we collect refuse, we fix street lighting, we fix roads. So they understand, and we understand what they want. We'll sit with them when that time comes when we have to install the prepaid meters. When the president visited us on the 18th of September, and people were saying, we want flat rate, and he put it very clear, and people understood that flat rate is not fair, because your neighbor might be paying 300 and using 150 worth of electricity, and your neighbor, the other neighbor is using 700 and is paying 300. It means the other one is subsidizing the other one, so it's not fair. Our solution is simple. We're going to be rolling out smart meters. Our smart meters, you can be able to interact with your smartphone on your pulse, telling you your consumption. But that's not only that. We believe that if we bring energy mix in Soweto and in other townships and in Johannesburg, like solar panels and gas, it will reduce reliability on the grid, which will make people be able to afford. Because you can't only rely on electricity. With the 18.9% increase, it's too steep because Eskom has to pay for the debt of Medibu Power Station because it has been passed over to the consumers. So we have to bring others. I came with a suggestion. Everybody says, why are you bringing this now? If we build a solar plant at Avalon Cemetery, we can power the whole of Dlamini in Soweto at a cheaper cost. And we say we have a plan. We have to just sit down, bring the private sector, and work together, because we believe that if all communities and the private sector working together, we can make Johannesburg better.
The SACP is not going to like the sound of that, the private sector getting more involved. You don't have to respond. One of the things is that all of this is going to take a long time. There's no chance that I can see. I mean, we'll have fixed the e-tolls problem before you're actually able to get control of these areas of Soweto for city power. It's going to take years.
Well, because we have a plan, it might take time, but it will not take more than 5 years to fix all the things that we want. We believe 2.5 years, the transfer takes over. At the same time, we will have been bringing the private sector to come and invest. We believe that it's doable and it's urgent. If we, as City Power, can loan Eskom mini substations, it means we are serious about solving the problems in Soweto. We also believe that if you effect credit management or credit control, you cannot switch off blocks. And from a mini sub, you have to target people who are not paying, because if you switch off at a mini sub level, you are also affecting people that are paying. And we believe that it is unfair, unjust, and unconstitutional, because I pay for my electricity. Why must I suffer for the next door neighbor who's not paying? So we're going to fix the problems. We know, we understand the people, we work with the people. I was in Soweto on Friday with the Premier, explaining our vision. And we don't want to tell lies and say we promise people flat rate. We're not going to implement flat rate. It's not fair. And we believe that people must pay for the consumption that they use.
Mpho Moerane, the Mayor of Joburg. You can tell how complicated this is. I didn't even get a chance to ask you anything else when you were on the campaign trail. Very quickly, you vaccinated?
Yes, I'm fully vaccinated. I took Pfizer. Maybe I'm not allowed to say it here. And I want to encourage the residents to vaccinate so that the president can open the country up, so that we can be able to get investments and bring people, especially people who have got money, say, I want to come to Johannesburg to invest our money.
I took Johnson & Johnson. My wife took Pfizer, so you and her can discuss it. Mr. Mayor, I appreciate the time. Thank you. Councillor Mpho Moerane is the Mayor of the City of Johannesburg.